any organization is better than no organization. Get a case management platform. It's practically malpractice not to have one. I do know Salesforce, and Salesforce is a beast. I mean, it doesn't matter how you do it, whether you go through Lithify, I assume Case Cloud, go Salesforce Direct. It's a full-time job running something on Salesforce. You need to have a lot of experience. Get out of the spreadsheets. If you're one of those people that's using Excel and your cell phone, stop it. Come on. You deserve better. I think that AI is best used when it frees up time for people to do more of their human decision making and human interaction. When AI can help us be more human, that's where we're going to get benefits from. Where I think we run into issues, or at least where I'm not ready to move, is when you have AI replacing humans.
All right, I'm here with one of my close friends, Josh Kwartler, who actually was there the day that I started Attorney Assistant and Ethen Ostroff Law. I can't wait to get into this. Josh, thanks so much for joining us today on another episode of The Growth Code. I appreciate it.
Happy to be here with you, brother. We got to hang out sometime soon.
Yeah, I know, exactly. So to give a little background, Josh, do you want to tell a little bit about what you do with Kwartler Manus, and maybe a little bit about our background according to your perspective, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I am the Chief Operating Officer of Kwartler Manus for the last 8 years, and I believe I met you in 2019. So I had just really taken over the role, and we met at the LitiQuest conference, and where legal tech was in a pretty crazy place, because I remember being on stage the year before and being like, text messages, guys. You got to be able to text with your clients. And people were like, wow, you got to meet customers where you are. And nowadays, I mean, if you're not texting, you're not trying. So it was, where we've come to now, the days of AI from there it's pretty wild. But you and I got paired up on a roundtable. And, I remember being like, oh man, it's so nice to be able to share the spotlight with someone. And even before that, they put us into like a pre-production meeting, and I think we kicked them out after like 2 seconds, like one email back and forth. We're like, you guys just leave. I'm gonna just talk to Ethen. We'll figure this out. You guys do whatever you're doing. And I mean, I think it's been a great friendship ever since then. I mean, I've always had so much fun. We've spoken together, I think, twice now. I don't want to do any speaking engagements without you. You just carry everything for me, man. It's great.
Well, I appreciate you too. And, to give a little backstory. So I think it was 2021 LitiQuest. I think we might have met briefly at others, but I know the one that just because I know our incorporation date when I started my businesses was November 2021. So Josh and I were speaking on the topic, I believe, was making Lithify your own. And Josh and I had very similar jobs at the time, where we were migrating both of our family businesses to Lithify, and, dealing with the culture and technology changes that come with that, which are, not necessarily a breeze. And I remember the topic being making Lithify your own. And Josh and I hit it off really quickly. And what I mostly talked about was using virtual staff and offshore coders to build out the org yourself. And, Josh was mostly focused on his app at the time, post Rio, which I'm sure his firm is still using to some variation today. We basically just talked about how we took a unique approach to building out Lithify, because frankly, the Lithify people help you a little bit, but not a lot, to succeed on their tool. But neither here nor there. And that day there was, 50 people in the room. And it was that day that I quit my job and left and started my businesses, Attorney Assistant, Turnkey Ops, and Ethen Ostroff Law. And it was really because of hanging out with Josh and seeing that what we had to say related to building out a Salesforce case management system was something that actually made sense to people. And, it was really that day that really was a huge turning point, actually, for me professionally, that, I'm grateful for Josh for giving me sort of the kick, really, to start things off.
I'm so happy to be a footnote in the epic that is the Ethen Ostroff tale. But I mean, you've always had a good product. Like, even from day one when we started bringing on your virtual assistants, I mean, Clea and Jude are still here, my original two VAs, and they're fabulous. They're great members of the team. I treat them no differently than anybody else. And they've been just such a driver of all of those little things. And I think, gosh, we must have like 16 or 17 virtual assistants with you guys, and they do everything from intake, opening claims and pre-litigation. They're paralegal assistants, receptionists. We have a guy who's speeding up our settlement distribution process now. I mean, there are some things that you need. I think a in-person, human, clients are going to show up sometimes, and you need to have U.S. folks for that. And sometimes people feel a little bit more comfortable having their case manager be someone in the States. But for everything else, man, I mean, they just do such a great job, and it's been a pleasure watching you kind of expand and start one company, then another company, and another company, and a law firm. So yeah, it's been awesome to be a part of the ride with you.
Well, it's been fun to have friends like you to do it with. Going a little back, I think that Josh's firm was my second, maybe third client. I remember exactly where we started. I remember, naturally at that time, people still didn't even know what a virtual assistant was. Now we're talking about AI, but people didn't even know what it was. They didn't know that it was possible to hire somebody from Central South America or the Philippines to do the shit you hate to do. And I remember it that you guys were like, well, not really sure about this, but I don't know how risky it is for us to have you guys go get our 200 deck pages we're behind on. So let's just start with that. And if that works, we'll go from there. And I remember telling you, well, if it goes well, they're going to get this done a lot faster than you expect. And you're going to need other stuff for them to do. And kind of from there, solving one problem at a time, it's kind of really spiraled from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you say. They did a great job getting things done. We had to find other things for them to do, and they did those things really well until we needed just more people for it. But there's just nothing else to say about it. Great people that do a good job, and the staffing, the folks on the staffing side do a great job of setting everything up for us. They do a great job of organizing the work and making sure that they keep track of the PTO and all of that HR stuff that, you think about, oh man, like, am I gonna have to comply with laws in the Philippines and Colombia and all other parts of South America? And no, it's easy. It's honestly easier than taking care of my own people, which is, it's such a compliment that, I would almost there are times where I'd almost rather have virtual assistants for everything.
Yeah, I from a company culture perspective, that's what we're the most proud of is they're going to come in and be your hardest working person on the shit your team hates to do. I know that.
And some of the nicest.
Yeah, exactly. So let's transition a little sort of to the case management side. So you guys are on Lithify. I am on Lithify. I am migrating to a new case management system, which we'll talk about soon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're moving to Case Cloud or Advologix, which is also on Salesforce.
Okay.
And I'll catch you up on that at another time. But in terms of like, if somebody is staring into the abyss of I don't know which case management system to use, where does that person start?
Well, I mean, for me, my first question is, how big are you? There's certain companies don't know about AdvoCloud. Is
Advologix or Case Cloud.
AdvoLogic?
I think they're rebranding to Case Cloud.
Okay, well, I'm gonna call them Case Cloud because that's way
Sure.
easier to say.
That's
That's
fine.
a good rebrand for them. Yeah, I don't know anything about Case Cloud, but I do know Salesforce, and Salesforce is a beast. I mean, it doesn't matter how you do it, whether you go through Lithify, I assume Case Cloud, go Salesforce Direct. It's a full-time job running
Yep.
something on Salesforce. You need to have a lot of experience. I tell people, Lithify is you're buying a Ferrari, but you need to hire a mechanic. And so if you're not a big company, you're probably too small for Salesforce. Unless you are one of those rare law firm owners where you're like, I'm a tech guy who also happens to do law, in that case, knock yourself out. But most lawyers I find are not super excited about doing technology projects for 30 hours a week.
Which is
So I would say,
required with that.
which is required. And that being said, if you are big enough and you do have it, there's so many little things that you can do to tweak your system, to improve the way that things flow, to increase your visibility, to speed up things for clients, to integrate with different partners. There's a cornucopia of valuable things that you can get on Salesforce. but you need to have a lot of dedication to doing it or have a dedicated person who you can trust to handle it. So if you're a big firm, I love Salesforce. I mean, Ethen jokes that the Lithify people maybe not always helpful. They give you a cat and they give you a bunch of knives and say, "Hey, skin it however you like." Which if you're into that kind of thing, which Ethen and I are, you can do some pretty cool stuff. But not everybody is. So my first question to you as a law firm trying to find a system is, how big are you? How much do you want to invest into this? There are a lot of benefits to doing it, but if you're a solo, if you're a two or three, maybe two or three lawyers, I'd probably steer you a different direction. Um, so
So
now you're
that's a
talking.
good segue. Like, where do you think people fail if they're gonna go to Salesforce?
I mean, the number one failure that people have on Salesforce is thinking that I've implemented it and it's good and that's what it's going to be.
Yep.
You know, especially when with Salesforce, most people haven't used Salesforce. So you don't really know what it does, you don't know what it looks like, and you're setting it up in this implementation on the hope that it's going to work kind of the way that you hope will, but generally your implementation partner doesn't really know law. So they're only kind of doing their best thought and they're asking you for advice and you don't really know exactly what you need to tell them. So you end up in this place where you've got an implementation that hopefully is like 80% good. And
Yep.
that's very hopeful that you're 80% good. And then you're going to have to spend the next couple of years building in that 20%. And
Yep.
if you really want to maximize it, you're going to spend the rest of your time on Salesforce tweaking it constantly.
Yeah.
And
It's
that's
never done. It's never done.
correct. It's never done. It's never done. And that's the value too. The value is that it's never done. You never hit a wall where you're like, this is, I can't do something that I want to do. You can do everything.
Yeah. And in theory, that was why I started my firm on it, is I never wanted to have to move to something that, I was too big for where I was. I knew that if I started on something way bigger than was necessary today, I would not need to migrate, even though, of course, I'm migrating right now. But in theory, Salesforce gives you the opportunity to never be too big for it. You will, if you have 1,000 employees one day, you will be fine on Salesforce. That's where you would probably want to be at that point. So if you are doing heavy volume and intake and, that's all you're doing, but maybe you have a pretty simple car accident firm, invest in an intake CRM and, go with one of the out of the box things that won't require constant tweaking every single day and needing to employ a Josh Kwartler to keep it running.
Yeah, though I will say, like, hey, if you are a simple car accident firm with one or two attorneys, do get on a system. Don't be like, hey, I'll wait till I get big enough to be on Salesforce. Get yourself something because you're better off transitioning from a My Case or a Practice Panther to Salesforce than you are going from your cell phone to Salesforce.
Exactly.
Any organization is better than no organization. And I see some people, I'm not, I'll send this interview to you because I'm speaking to someone very specific right now. Get a case management platform. It's practically malpractice not to have one
I
of some
agree. You don't want to be in a position where you need it and you don't have it. You
correct.
at
And
least
definitely
should
don't
be
want to
able
be
to be doubling your firm size on the system you're on right now.
correct. And I think that that's really an important note that like you want to be able to say, okay, what system is going to allow me to double my firm size? And to do that, you kind of need to have tracking because it's tough to know how your firm is doing when you don't have any case management system. So, get out of the spreadsheets. If you're one of those people that's using Excel and your cell phone, stop it. Come on. You deserve
Exactly.
better.
So, transitioning off, long story short, you need something. If you're starting a firm, if you're a solo practitioner, you need something. If it starts with Clio, great. If it ends with Clio and it works for you, that's also great. But if you are starting on nothing and you're on spreadsheets, you're gonna let stuff slip through the cracks. So, long story short, get something. You don't necessarily need Salesforce today. You might. It's really up to you. But don't get nothing. So I'm transitioning now to sort of the AI space.
Cool.
So I've been noticing a little bit of what I would like to describe as AI fatigue right now. Over the last 2 years, there's been tons of AI companies, if we're talking even just the personal injury space, dozens and dozens of these companies for various things from, demand writing, medical chronologies to AI outbound voice or inbound voice for claims opening or intake. What are some things that you guys have your eye on that you think AI is important over the next, call it 3 years, because who knows what past 3 years looks like right now?
Sure. I mean, I think that AI is best used when it frees up time for people to do more of their human decision making and human interaction. So, not to steal a Claude line, but when AI can help us be more human, that's where we're going to get benefits from. Where I think we run into issues, or at least where I'm not ready to move, is when you have AI replacing humans. I mean, I personally get frustrated when I'm talking to an AI after one or two, rounds. I'm the person jamming zero for the operator or asking for an agent. So I'm not ready for a fully automated AI intake. But I love the idea of an AI chase agent that, once when an intake's gone to 20 calls and you're like, hey, I don't want to give up on this person, but I don't want to waste energy on it. An AI voice agent that reaches out to someone and says, hey, are you still interested? I think that's great. Treatment verification. I think that that's a great thing where, hey, there's room here that I don't think that, we necessarily need a human touch on every single point there. Um, so there are some client-facing roles where you can have AI, but I think a lot of the value is going to be coming in the back-end processing, routing things to the correct places, checking for duplicates, some data extraction. Personally, I'm not completely sold on um, the full AI demands where you're going to feed in your medical records and you're going to say, "Hey, write me a demand." Um, do I think it can do a good job? Yeah, I absolutely do. Do I think that it will do a good job 100% of the time? No. And if you ask them, you ask the AI companies themselves, they'll say, yeah, I mean, we're going to be good 99% of the time. And, you know, that's pretty good statistically. But what are you going to say to that person who, had a negative outcome? And you said, well, the AI kind of messed it up and we didn't really check it because we're not in the habit of checking it. And then you're like, okay, well, that's a malpractice suit. Now I'm paying that out of my pocket. So, I think that there are some things that it does good on assisting humans, but I don't think that we're far enough along to replace a human where we say, hey, have the AI do this and just send it through.
Yep.
Um, and the sad part is that we tried doing that. Um, and I'll credit my staff on this. They said, "Hey, Josh, we want to do a really good job, and we know that we are judged by the standard of the work we put out. And to be honest with you, it's taking us longer to check what the AI is doing than for us to do it ourselves." And I said, "You know what? Props to you guys because you had a way to make this a lot quicker and easier for yourselves, but you have a high standard of work, and you want to make sure that everything is right." And so we pulled back on that.
Yep.
Not to say we're not doing AI, but we're not doing AI demands.
Interesting. It's interesting to see where people are drawing their line, product by product, and where the companies that are coming out are building their business models towards. Something that we are not oblivious to is, this technology is changing really fast, and we can't say similar to Salesforce anything is done. I'm open minded that it could, in theory, be better than all of us at almost everything very soon.
Oh, for
Um, but the human in the loop that you are sort of referring to, the validation of people that really know what good of this thing looks like, I feel like is very critical right now. What does a good demand look like? We still
Mhm.
need someone to verify that or it's malpractice. What does a good intake look like? We still need a human in the loop to be transferred if AI is jumbling up and not having an easy time on a car accident. And the risk is so high at intake that if it messes up, you're going to lose this client forever. So, I completely agree with you. It needs to be top notch. And especially today, maybe not forever, but at least for a while, humans who are experts at that outcome being in the loop, I think is very important.
I agree, and I also think, especially on the intake point, that these are really important calls to people. Like, we work at a law firm, we have, thousands of these calls a day, but on the other end of the phone, it's someone who had maybe their first car accident of their entire life. And,
Yep.
it's not even about, getting the information and moving forward. It's about the assurance. Sometimes it's about telling someone, hey, you know what? You have car insurance. for this purpose, and you shouldn't feel bad about using it. I mean, we talk to people all the time. They're like, I'm not a person who sues people. And it's like, well, you need to. That's an important part of why you have this product. And if you're not using it, you're going to lose it forever. You're losing the point of having it. So, I think that at least for today, um, I would want to be a human. I would want to talk to a human. And I always look at our business and say, from the customer perspective, how would I want to be treated? Now, do I always do what the customer wants? No, because I'm not delivering them coffee on Tuesdays and Thursdays and, calling them Ubers for their nail appointments. But, within reason, I want to treat them the way that I would want to be treated. And
Yep.
I think that talking to a human when you've had something horrible happen to you through no fault of your own is common courtesy. Now, to your point, though, in 5 years, we may be looking back on this and saying, hey, the Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they don't want to talk to humans. They actually prefer AI. And that could totally happen. And when we
Or
start seeing,
text. They don't even want
yeah,
to
or
talk to
text.
anyone.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about, sending people a form where, it's just like, hey, text back and forth and that's all they want. Cool. If that's what you want, by all means, I'm happy to meet you there. Maybe I'm showing my age. I think that we're a little not far, we're not far enough along into the age of AI that, when your mother died in her nursing home, that you're comfortable with an AI taking your information and getting back to you.
Yep. Where we are kind of envisioning AI in intake specifically is sort of someone that just guarantees the call gets picked up,
Yep.
almost a replacement for like a phone tree. Hey, FYI, I have a human listening to this and jumping in shortly. Can you tell me, is this about an existing case or a new case? And then when
Yeah.
they say new case, okay, give me a little descriptor that I can pass to our team. They dig into it a little bit and they say, all right, I'm going to transfer it to human. Human jumps right in, actually sends a contract, or if it's a case that's legit. That's kind of the blend that we see as possible in the near future. Also, there are states like California coming out and they're saying you can't have an AI send a contract, which is really interesting. What's the ethical landscape gonna, there's gonna be a very, very much significant resistance in the legal space on what can AI do. It's going to be very interesting to see those kinds of things come out. So,
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
that's like
Sorry.
the whole point of having a professional license is that there is a little bit of a threat to do things correctly.
Exactly. And
Like
there should be because it
right,
keeps the standard high.
exactly. Like there's a reason for there's actually a good reason for having all this licensing boards is that it keeps people honest. And, to the point of my intake people, it's, or my case managers writing demands, it's like, well, who's the buck stop at? And ultimately it's you and your law
Yeah, it's the
license.
lawyer signing. That's where it
Right.
stops. And if you're willing to sign something or rubber stamp your signature on something you don't read, you probably do deserve sanctions if you quote a fake case or something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean the examples are plenty, and I'm sure they're going to keep coming because not everybody wants to do things the right way, but I do think that there's a lot of opportunity for AI to improve the client experience, even if it's to your point when a client fills out a form on your website that an AI calls and says, "Hey, I see you just filled out a form. Would you like to talk to a human?"
Yep,
Perfect use case.
exactly. All right, we're going to shift more to the human side. So, for those listening to this who have never hired someone from the Philippines or Central South America, for example, what are some roles that you find that virtual assistants thrive in from your experience?
I mean, it's broad because they're really talented people, but we've had a lot of success with intake, especially finding Spanish-speaking intake agents. South America has been a wonderful trove of places people to get there. I find that they do an excellent job in sort of kind of more closed loop systems where there's sort of a single objective and a limited amount of information that really needs. And in fairness, to them, they kind of would probably succeed at any entry level position
Yep.
where there is just kind of like, hey, they don't necessarily have all the blanket knowledge that a United States person would have, but if you feed them the things that they need, they're ready to go.
Just to give an example of folks listening to this. So, what I'm imagining Josh has created for his folks, which I'm sure I've seen remnants of it at some point. They show up to work every day. They pour themselves a cup of coffee and they see a report that says, here are the medical records to go retrieve. When that list hits zero, then there's probably another thing that they can do. Go label this thing or download records from this place and check this box once you've done it. Is that a fair description?
That's exactly what we do. I mean, I don't think they've ever gotten to the bottom of the list, but we keep them busy. But at the same time, if it's kind of the same way. If I'm talking to someone and you're saying, "Hey, I want to hire my first virtual assistant. What do I do?" Find a small thing that you do very frequently that has that human interaction element to it, and say, okay, what is everything that they need to achieve this? Maybe it's a social security number, claim number, adjuster name. Okay, I've set this up where it has everything you need for it. How am I going to track that you're doing it the way that I want? Is that logging calls, collecting documents? And then you train the people. I mean, like, they're no different than anybody else. You go all around the world, everybody wants to do a good job. I'll say that, the attorney assistant folks, even more so than most, want to do a great job, and you set them up for success. Find something small that they can start on that'll impact your business, and then let them run. Keep interacting the same way you would anytime you hire a new person for a new role. You got to touch base with them and make sure they're getting what they need. They might not, one thing I will note is a lot of times they might not be quick or confident enough to say, hey, I'm running into a problem. So you need to be proactive and reach out to them and say, like, hey, how's it going? I see it's not I see you might be behind. How can I help you? There's a little there. That's one of the only things that I will say. There is sometimes some culture barrier where people may not be comfortable asking you questions or for help. So you need to make yourself accessible to them. Again, much like you would for any new employee.
Yep. There's kind of two things on that. Number one, Filipinos specifically by nature are very non-confrontational people, and they don't want to let you down or come off as unintelligent. So they sometimes need to be reminded, hey, like if you're done this or if you have questions, come to me. And you might need to remind them that, once a week for the first few months, just to make sure they like really believe you that you're kind of there to support them. Part two of this that's so important and why Josh has thrived with these people. In Josh's firm, it's not like, hey, I'll email you when I have something for you. That's where it fails. I'll email you when I have something for you. Stand by. They're gonna twiddle their thumbs. We don't want that. You're paying a flat rate for whatever they do over that 40 hours. If they're unproductive in 30 of 40 hours a week, nobody benefits from that. Our people want to do good work for you. And Josh would never have a standby for an email type setup, which it's shocking the firms I've seen do it that way.
Yeah, the only virtual assistant who's ever on standby is we have two receptionists who do a great job, by the way, and highly recommend if you're trying to find receptionists, and you're having a hard time, yeah, you need somebody at your front desk, I think, you need someone who's in person to greet. But as your firm is growing and you start saying, oh man, I need somebody who can answer the phones from 12 to 8 p.m., you're gonna have a little bit of a hard time finding that in the States. Plus, the staffing it and putting them in a spot, you're gonna have a lot of success finding that abroad, provided you're using a voice over IP phone system. Which again, this is another one of those things. If you're not using a voice over IP phone
Yeah, you
system,
need it.
yeah,
That's
what are we
like
doing?
a had to have solved that in 2022 problem, unfortunately.
I mean, honestly, 2021, like if you got through the pandemic without a voice over IP phone system,
Good for you.
reach out to me because I'd like to know how you did
Yeah,
that.
exactly. All right, let's talk a little bit about the future. What does a law firm over the next, let's say, in 3 years look like to you?
3 years.
That is quote unquote successful.
That is quote unquote successful. Well, I think that it looks fairly similar to a successful law firm right now. I think that if you were looking for the differences, you would see that a successful law firm 3 years from now is smaller per case, so less humans per case than you're seeing right now, because all of this AI, the valuable stuff that it's going to do is going to make all of those human interactions a little bit quicker, logging your calls quicker, sorting through your emails and pushing things into your case management system. It's
Less
it's
double
easy.
click.
Right. Exactly. So it's going to speed things up for people, but you're still going to want people. At least I think you're still going to want your people. Um, I think that your staff mix is going to shift more towards litigation than pre-litigation because a lot of the tasks that AI can help you with, AI or virtual assistants can help you with, tend to be more on the pre-litigation and intake side.
Yep.
Whereas if you're a trial firm, uh, you're not sending Claude into court, so you're going to need those attorneys. The depositions, those take up human body hours. So as a service industry, I think that the lawyer class is going to stay pretty much the same. I think the mix is going to drift a little bit more towards, litigation, paralegals, and attorneys who can, be trusted to do things 100% of the time.
Yep.
Um, but other than that, other changes that I would see that I would expect to see is, more AI, especially on the intake level. I think that firms are definitely going to be tempted, especially on the mass tort, Social Security, the more higher volume businesses. I think that there's going to be a temptation to lean into more AI intake and AI claims processing, which will probably work for those industries really well. Your Social Security, ticket where or your Social Security case that you need to push along because they're not getting back to you. Yeah, that's something that you could probably talk to an AI about, and that would reasonably, not be too upsetting. So I think different firms are going to have different exposure to AI, but I think in general, our pre-litig in at least personal injury pre-litigation will not shrink. I don't think that successful businesses are going to shed headcount. I think you're going to have the people that you already have do more with less head or less people.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. All right. Anything else you want to leave people with? Why should so Josh works at a really great firm in the Philly, South Jersey area with his brother, who is a excellent trial lawyer and great person. So why should somebody listening to this refer you guys a case?
Because we're going to take care of the case the same way that you would take care of your case. We might do a better job of it because we really care about it. We care about you, our referral partner, because you're a source of business. Your client is a person. We got to take care of both of you guys. So everything that we do here is client centric and client focused. We want to make sure that your client goes back to you and says, "Wow, Ethen, thank you for referring me to Kwartler Manus because they did a great job, and I appreciate you for sending me to them." And that's our ethos for everything. You need case updates, we're going to get it for you. You want to be hands off and hope that and just expect a check. We'll send you that check the second we take our money. We're happy to provide as many touches or as little touches for you guys. We prefer a little because we're going to do a good job and take care of it for you. But we're happy to meet people where they are, and that's really kind of the big theme is that we meet people where they are: our clients, our referral partners, our employees, our vendors, our podcast hosts.
Yeah. And
Just
I can attest these guys are definitely, great partners and great people. So, you don't have to worry about chasing them down for fees or anything along those lines. So I'm going to make sure, Josh, your firm's information and a way to get in touch with you is below this. And, Josh and I both geek out on Salesforce. If you ever have a question about case management, I'll make it easy to get in touch with you. And, hopefully you get some law firm owner that is running the same problems we've already solved and you can help them out. So, you
Yeah,
know,
man.
uh,
Pleasure. And I'll throw one last little plug in for Post Rio. It's a Lithify plugin. If you are sending physical mail documents, you click the button, select who you want to send it to, click send, and the mail go physical mail out the door. You can put in links to confirmations, track USPS tracking. Uh, just a neat little toy. As Ethen said, we like to geek out about our tech projects, and this has been one of my babies for a long time, and that's how we got introduced. So I'd be remiss not to share it.
absolutely. Well, anything else you want to leave the audience with, Josh?
No, I think we covered a lot of stuff. If you have any questions about how we run the business over here at Kwartler Manus, please feel free to reach out. If you're following Ethen, I think you should continue because he's got a lot of great ideas, and you're going to learn something.
Appreciate it. All right, man. Well, hopefully we get together soon, but thanks for joining today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Catch you later.